Hello, this is Lisa LeRose, and welcome today to Connect to Love with Michael J. Russ and I, and we are so excited to have you join us today. We are so in tune with so many different things in our lives, and, today Michael is such a wonderful reminder to me to take a deep breath and, to really pay attention. And he sent me something just yesterday that he was seeing in his life, which was triple zeros. And ironically, in my life, I was revisiting a work by Dr. Joe Vitale called Zero Limits, was all about living in that same space. So I said to him, we're so connected. It's just amazing that when we slow ourselves, we can delve into all of these incredible things. And, he texted me, what does it mean to live in zero limits? So as I was trouncing through my day, the beginnings, and feeling a little bit unsettled and running in, trying to get ready to do the show, I noticed on the stairs there was a praying mantis. And I could have stepped on him, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't see him. And when the first round that I went up the stairs, but I saw him sitting there, and he was just still. He was not moving at all. I mean, I almost thought that he had died and was died of fright, paralyzed from fright. And I thought I was watching, and I took a little minute to take a picture of him, and then I moved my hands, and he came back, and he put his little hands up in like little fisticuffs, and I said, okay, dude, you know what, I'm going to leave you alone. I'll respect your space. I'll give you that space. And then, I was sort of thinking about that energy of that mantis and what that symbolism means and, means to me and, to being still. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is my gift of that zero, that space of being in that zero space. And, and then me being me, I thought as I came back, I just like, okay, I'll leave you. And then I watched him he got stuck up the stair doing the vertical climb. And so I reached out my hand and I picked him up and then, placed him on a leaf, and he kind of kept looking like kept reaching his hands up. Now I went higher. I went off. So I put him on my hand again, and I moved, and then he jumped off on the cement, and I thought, oh, great, now he's really going to get smashed by somebody. And, and I went to go pick him up, and he decided where he wanted to go. So that was my little reminder today about what it really means to live in that space of zeros. But without further ado, I'd love to welcome my co-host, Michael J. Russ. Welcome, Michael. And I'd love for you to start out. I know you had a beautiful quote that you wanted to share with the audience, and just some insights in how that moves you. So I'll turn the mic over to you.
Yeah, pay attention to triple numbers and the triple zero. What I forwarded to you was just one of 5 different interpretations of what angelically that, according to the divine, what triple zero means, what they're trying to convey. And I pay attention to them because I get a lot of these signs and signals, and I was told to begin to pay closer attention to them because my thoughts, I would send out a thought and I'd get a mirror back of a number like almost instantaneously. It was pretty amazing. I don't think that the states are making triple or quadruple number license plates with that kind of prevalence. So as I don't see anything as an accident or a coincidence. In my view, everything in the universe has a divine purpose and meaning structure. All we have to do is focus on what that might be and divine from what we can that can positively help us evolve. But the very interesting quote from Lao Tzu was, new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. And I thought about that and how I know in my life I've had some endings to relationships and other things that have not been so easy. I can't say that it's been with great prevalence because probably once or twice, because my life has been pretty easy. I think this life for me is one of a lot of introspection. I never had kids in my life. I've been married twice, but no children, and because I didn't want children, it just wasn't something that I was interested in. And I know that in society there's a lot of pressure and initially I did get pressure from my parents, but I told them that's not going to happen. Look to my brother and sister; they'll probably give you grandkids, and they ended up doing that. So the pressure was very often me. But this is what living with zero limits, making sure, interpreting life in your reality and how it's unfolding before you. We have to remember that we have choices. We can choose zero limits. We can choose to experience the praying mantis situation as either, oh my gosh, there's a bug in my house, or back on attached to my house and somehow seek to destroy it because bugs are scary, or we can see it as an intelligent little being that has a mind of its own and knows where it wants to go. And we just, we can maybe step in and see if we can help it get there, or maybe in the end, we just need to leave it alone because it'll decide how, where it needs to go and how it needs to get there. And I do this a lot with dragonflies out at the barn. There's lots of dragonflies at certain times of the year. And in the past 15 years or so, 16 years of working out there, there have been times when a dragonfly would land on my shoulder. And there'd be times when it would land on what I was working on, or land on my mower. And you're like, you're moving right along there, and you see this, and you look at it, and you go, wow, it's a super intelligent little being. There are people who will tell you that dragonflies have special meaning. Monarch butterflies, or just butterflies in general, would land on me, or land on what I'm doing, and pay me some attention. I'm like always so grateful that these little creatures that have such short lifespans would be as curious about me as I'm about them, and I don't see it as a problem. Now I'll probably give you a totally different story when it comes to fire ants, but I give them a lot of respect and I give them a lot of space, and because they're doing what they do. And I know that the little tiny things can bite you, and you're experiencing their wrath for the next 3 or 4 or 5 days. So I give them a lot of space. But this is just life. I've said before to you that what stands in the way of living a life with zero limits, in my view, is number one, that we're capable of doing it, that we have the right to do it, and that and then we have to have the awareness. We have to have the awareness to remember that we have that right and that we can do it and we can make that choice. Stuff gets in the way. Stuff of life. Yeah, and I'm not going to go off on an entire diatribe of the societal boxes that society attempts to put you in. However, and the people and the people you respect. Our world, I don't know if anybody would be willing to allow our world to survive, to experiment with a lack of organization and just kind of see what happens. It seems to me that there's a lot of structure in the world because a lot of building blocks depend upon that structure. And we have to find a way to coexist with that structure and yet still have our freedoms and still have our ability to choose zero limits and zero adversity, to see things not as adversity but as opportunities, or as the ability to as events that give us an opportunity to evolve or transform or practice transcendence, practice transformation, practice the alchemy that we have. I wrote in the podcast last week, if nothing ever happened, our souls would never evolve. We have to have things, right? We got to have things occur, and in order to practice I could say practice claiming the rights that we have, the right of sovereignty, and the right to personal alchemy, to transform, to say, no, I choose not to see that as something, as a problem in my life, as a circumstance that will take me down. I choose to see that as this and move in that direction. And if those things didn't happen, we wouldn't be able to make those choices and thereby evolve and elevate our conscious awareness and elevate ourselves, elevate our souls to live in a different way. If we wouldn't be able to practice our kindness and empathy and compassion and love if we didn't have that. We didn't have those things occur. So they are blessings. All those things have to be seen as blessings, and that changes your whole thought paradigm, right?
Oh, 100%.
New beginnings.
100%.
Yeah, new beginnings. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
And even for me, the mantis, in Native American, they always said that it was there to teach the power of stillness, that we're moving far too quickly, and that's exactly what I was doing with my day. That I was missing the things. How I love praying mantis, how I didn't even see it and there it was sitting right in front of me in the middle of the stairs, waiting there, just still. And it is for me, like, as you said, when you're there practicing a thought, one of the things that I really loved about the work in the book Zero Limits, he talked about, yes, you have an intention, but beyond that, when you allow yourself to be in that stillness, you can access your imagination. And that's where creation comes from. And I just, for me, that's where I live. I love being creative. I love, playing with different things. And I was thinking to myself when you were speaking, the passing of the anniversary of Glenn Brooks, the founder of Vibrant Living, was yesterday, the 9th.
Really?
It's been 1 year since he transitioned, and and as you said, we lost a dear friend, but for you and I, we gained a deeper connection. It was through Glenn that I met you. And I know you had, and I'd love to hear a little bit about this because, I was always a big fan of Bernie Siegel, and one of the things he said in one of his books was one of my favorite quotes: "Every day is my best day. This is my life. I'm not going to have this moment again." And you had an opportunity to share the stage with Bernie, did you not, at Glenn's event? Yeah. And that was really about, it was an unscripted power event, and you spoke on zero adversity, is that correct?
Yeah, I talk on zero adversity and the power of perception, basically, the power of perception, and how I did this little talk that I do about the fact that perceptions are scripts. And first off, let me say that Bernie Siegel was an amazingly warm and loving gentleman. What an amazing guy he is, and how his shift his perspective, and the perspective of every day is my best day, and I'm living my best life. Is one of those perceptions that again shapes all of your interactions with your day. And I believe a couple of weeks ago, or a week or 2 weeks ago in our show, I kind of talked about how we have to, in the morning, purposely choose with intention how we are going to approach every day, and not let the day dictate how we approach the day. We have to take command of what happens. We decide, okay, this is my best day, and I'm living my best life. Nothing's going to get in the way of that. And then you find out that your mother passed away. It's something like that, which is kind of like out there on the end of the extreme of what could happen that day that could throw you into a tizzy. And for me, my mother's 93, going to be 94 this December, and we have allowed her to, enabled her, I should say, not allowed, but we've enabled her to live, still continue to live by herself and drive and fly by herself between, one place and another. She doesn't. If there's a connection involved, we got to be there. But it's what's interesting is we have the ability. If that would happen to me, I've already made my peace with my mother. I've already, every day or every other day, she hears from somebody every day. Myself, my sister, my brother, somebody. And if life is about love and we're in respect and gratitude, that is, I'm certain to in every conversation express how grateful I am that the decisions were made that allowed me to evolve into this self-actualized human soul that I am, and allowed the choices that helped me get to where I am now. And I've expressed that to her. So if I get a phone call, it's not going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I learned decades ago that if you express what you need to express right here, right now to people, that is living your best life. And living your best day is making sure that you're letting the people around you know how you feel about them. Everybody I know, all my friends, male, female, whatever, say, I love you. I love you. In every interaction, that we have. And whether I talk to them once a year, twice a year, once a month, once a week, same thing. And it's interesting because judgment gets in the way of a lot of things. I don't like what they did. I don't like what they said, 10 years ago. And you're like, what happened? But, that they're not even the same person as they were 10 years ago. And you're holding that against them. You're sort of judging somebody. If you cared about them, if it was something if the relationship that was something you valued, because there are relationships that just need to end because of the fact that they have no longer any relevance for both of you. You've both evolved beyond your whatever friendship you had or whatever relationship you had, and you've now, because you've changed and they've changed, you've got new friends, you've changed your frequencies, and therefore you're attracting different frequencies, and some frequencies fall away. Lower frequency relationships they fall away, right? That's just kind of the way it happens, and I know somebody who, I have a friend who cherishes every relationship, regardless of how it's going, how it's flowing, so to speak. And I've said many times, I said, sometimes you just have to let a relationship go. Because it's toxic, because you've moved on from it, yet it's still holding you back. And you cannot be afraid to let go of toxicity. If that person's not willing to evolve or perceive you in a different way as you've evolved in life, then you have to make a decision. It's a very challenging decision, and for me, I've always encouraged people to be honest about themselves and how they feel about people. Not in a I'm going to slap you upside the face way. There's no reason to be rude or angry or disrespectful to anyone. You can find a way to very lovingly say that this is how, and this is the way I tell people, is always let people know how what they did make you feel. You have control over your feelings, but initially, this is what you said made me feel. You need to know that how you're communicating with people, me in particular, is not in a loving, kind, and respectful way. And so initially I feel like this. I get over it because I'm in control of the way I feel, not you. However, the initial shock of what you said, I took it this way. And that's what people need to know. And that's a loving thing that you can convey to somebody. Communication is vital and the key to life. And it's the key to living zero limits. And by the way, what you said about being able to intuit the inspirations, the creativity, it's interesting because I meditated for about an hour and a half this morning, and I wrote something down as you were saying it, and that is, instead of freaking out, get quiet. Instead of freaking out about something, get quiet. The opposite, getting quiet is generally the opposite of what you do when something happens that throws you for a loop. Somebody says something, that makes you angry or this, or you run into a situation or challenge or what you see as a problem in life, most people will turn around and get on their phones and publish it on social media and call 10 of their closest friends and complain and whine and moan about it, when really, if there's something that needs to occur, it's going to emanate from you, and you need to sit down and get quiet, just get all distraction out of the way and connect with your higher self and be able to intuit what you need to guide yourself through it. Simple enough. And train yourself to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you find yourself, I think part of the gift of revisiting a book that, really inspired me, and the book was co-written by Len Haleakala, and he gained fame for those of our audience members here on PRNFM that may not know him, he gained fame as a gentleman who was able to heal an entire ward of the mentally, criminally insane by never seeing a patient in person. He found that through his healing himself and really seeing that, okay, there was some aspect of him that needed, if it was showing up in somebody else, it needed to be healed within him. And he found that within the 0 point space, that everything that's emanated from the brain, and it's so fascinating to me that it's actually already existing in consciousness. Before there's a thought, there's already something there. And so it's our connections, and that the way that he was able to do that was through loving himself and forgiving himself and apologizing to himself and thanking himself, being in gratitude, those 4 things. And, when Joe Vitale was speaking, he was talking about how frustrated he was with one of his employees because they were working on a project together that needed to be done, and the guy didn't show up for work. And he said he's human, and so he's angry, and he's, doing this and this and this, but instead he had to remind himself in 3 days. He's like, okay, I love you, I love you, I love you, and just kept repeating that over and over again. And in 3 days, the gentleman reached out to him from prison, and he's like, oh, okay, and told him what he needed to do to get the stuff done and problem solved. But as you said, he could have gone on to a social media site and, vehemently, bastardize this person or whatever it was,
right.
and it wouldn't have made him feel any better. And more, and I find that even with myself, I'm like, okay, and we're all human. None of us have these lily white days, I guess, where there's no conflict or just the perfect day. I mean, some days you wish that, and we have frustrations. I said something that was not very kind to my brother yesterday, and as soon as it flew out of my mouth, it was because it was hot and humid, and I never should have said. It was just a comment, and as soon as it came out of my mouth, I regretted it, and immediately I apologized. But the whole day it bothered me, and when I got home, I just said, I really, please accept my apology. It was very thoughtless and unkind of me, and it never should have come out of my mouth. And here, I try to be a better person. Please accept my apology. I'm not
right.
really sincere.
And then forgive yourself for making the comment.
Right, and then it was done, and he said, okay, I forgive you. Like, and I love my brother, and I really, that it was so thoughtless and so uncaring, and but the same, when he did was take that divine moment of forgiveness. He could have been like, well, I'm not, we could have engaged in a whole other dialogue, but he went into that grace of forgiveness and allowed me that, and so there was an exchange of love there, and so it just made me even more so want to go back and practice the Ho'oponopono of forgive me, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you. And even if, I think what Joe was just doing, I love you, being that in that point of zero space, the 0 point field, what they consider the 0 point field, where there is only love. And that's what this show, Connect to Love, is all about. I mean, I think that's what brought us together, Michael. You know, it was the love and the passion of one man and the divine spark he saw in you and what he saw in me and how he brought a lot of different people together. And, you know, I think it's, you know, you never know how other people's lives are going to be touched. And we do talk about that a lot, but it really, it does. It makes a big difference. And, you know, I think as we're awakening, I mean, to understand that we are human, we are having that experience, and we've come here so that the divine can experience the imperfections of being human. And
I agree with you. I agree with you. Glenn was a very interesting gentleman. He had very big dreams of helping to impact people's lives in a very dramatic way. And I would often tell him that there's two ways to make that happen. Sometimes it's on a grand scale, and sometimes it's just one-on-one. And we never know exactly what it is that we're meant to do. Although impacting one person, it does impact the world, because once that person changes, their world changes around them. And I always remember that, because with my podcasts, although I have people, and even with this podcast, we have people all over the world who listen. We have to literally forget about, give up our desire or need for millions of people to listen to what we have to say. The people who really are ready for what we have to say and who are ready to expand, they'll already be guided in one way or another, sometimes through seemingly serendipity, what seems like serendipity, to they'll be turned on to the podcast, and they'll get from it what it is that they're supposed to get from it that can be so timely in their lives right now to move forward. So to our listeners, I'll simply say, I'm grateful. I know you're grateful too for the listenership and for sharing the podcast, sharing this radio show, and its in its consequential podcast with people around them. You never know what it is that somebody needs. They're not going to tell you, and what only thing you could do is to be giving, a giving person, and simply say, hey, I ran into this cool thing, and release your desire or need for them to actually follow up on it, and let them make choices and decisions for themselves. We're not here to control people. And I like Ho'oponopono, by the way. It's really awesome. And it is something that we ought to dedicate a little bit of a show to that, to help people understand on a deeper level what it is and how easy it is, how simple it is to live from that mindset, and to practice that even in their quiet time. We're not quite certain sometimes what we have to forgive ourselves for. It's not an awareness that many people keep, although there's things that happen. It's kind of this blanket forgiveness for yourself, which, believe it or not, does impact your life. If you say it enough, repeat it enough to yourself, it will shift. It'll create a shift in your state of being, and that shift is absolutely positive, And the shift that you'll see, the way it impacts the frequency it sends out to other people, that will emanate from you as a result of it is another thing. So here's what we're going to do next week. Next week on the show, we're going to dig deeper into that. Remember that I've written it down. And we're going to dig deeper into that and how people can adopt Ho'oponopono into their lives and really understand what it is. We'll label it, and we'll put it out there and show how it can be woven into your everyday existence, how easy it is, how simple and quick and the like. From the very moment that you get up in the morning, you can say it before you get out of bed. It's really awesome. and live your day from that perspective. It is important to live. At some point, decide the moment you get up, the moment your eyes open, how you are going to live your day. It never ceases to amaze me how people go through their day like a ship without a rudder or a sail. Mm-hmm. You know, the waves of the ebb and flow of life takes them in one direction, it takes them in another direction, and they're always reacting to things that are going on outside of them instead of literally dictating themselves where they're going to go, how they're going to get there, what their mindset and state of being is. And if we're talking about vibrational frequencies, the only way to hold on to elevated frequencies, your happiness, your hope, your optimism, your compassion and your empathy and your love and joy, the only way to hold on to those frequencies is to mitigate the things that seek to diminish them. Mm-hmm. Things that seek to diminish them. That is the only way. And they're coming at you at lightning speed. Lightning speed. I can't tell you how many newsletters I get or how many texts I get or this or that. And I have to read a lot of newsletters throughout the day for my work, my career. And there's other things that I'm interested in as well. And in our country and other countries as well, everybody is seeking your attention. Everyone is seeking your attention. They want, because if they get your attention, then they make money. And that's just the way it is. If you engage with them, then they have the ability to make advertising dollars from that, from your engagement with them. And what we have to do as, human beings, souls in human form, living, light and with as I like to say, that's wearing a suit of clothes, and living in this world of oneness, is be able to mitigate the division, the intentionality, I should say, of what is coming at us in terms of information on a daily basis. We don't need 99% of what it is that is put out there. It doesn't make our lives any better. We have to decide what it is that we're going to engage with, and understanding that our emotional capital, which is what I call emotional capital, because I've kind of broken it down into something that people can, something, instead of being subjective, something being objective. Emotional capital, your happiness, your frequency is your emotional capital. Your state of being is your emotional capital. Your attitude is your emotional capital. Your energy and your time. This is emotional capital. And you can decide where to invest it from the moment you get up in the morning. I'm not investing in these things. I'm going to invest in these things today. When those things happen, you go, no investment required. I'm going to simply let it go. It's not valuable to me. It has no relevance to me in my life and my happiness. It's not relevant to me living from living a zero-limit existence. There's no relevance there. And so that's the decision that needs to be made on a daily basis. And no matter how many podcasts I know I make, I think I'm up to almost 180 now. The same thread goes through each. Yeah, it's kind of neat. I don't know how I'm gonna have that many things to talk about. It's just something else, Sometimes it's just saying 10 podcasts could be saying the same thing in 10 different ways, because I've come up with a new way that can maybe communicate with someone different. That somebody who didn't get it before will get it this way because it's being explained in a different way. I've kind of turned it around and put it in a different context. And other times it's just that, creating a reality. This morning it was 3:00 in the morning. Cat had just walked across my body and awakened me. And I said, which happens in the middle of the night, every night, I get a cat standing on me at some particular point. I'm swearing she's dancing. I have no idea what's going on. It's completely dark in the room, and it's like, are you awake? I want to walk all over you. Are you awake? Because I'm awake. It's night, and I'm a nocturnal being. I want somebody to play with. which is exactly what she's asking. I thought, no, not happening. However, I had this thought this morning. I've been looking to kind of tie a couple of things together, and about creating reality and your frequency. Your frequency. I'm attempting not to put the cart before the horse. You create your reality, but your frequency, as I was thinking about it this morning, your vibrational frequency is what you apply, is what helps you create your reality. Your state of being helps you create your reality. It's not the other way around. You don't create your reality isn't created. Isn't the first thing that occurs. You work on your frequency. The state of being you create for yourself first thing in the morning helps you create the reality you experience throughout the day. Is I guess what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And that is something that takes work, because if you're in a family and you've got kids and your significant other, everybody's running, right? Everybody gets up running. School's back in session now, so. Around the country and around the world, schools in session. Summer's over, and so there's a plan that has to occur. And I was thinking about this when it comes to something simple as stress. Dr. Sanjay Gupta had an interesting piece about stress this morning in his little 1-minute
I love
update.
Him.
Yeah, he was talking about stress in some study that talked about how to reduce stress, and I'm going, I can tell you exactly how to reduce stress. It's function of its stress is self-imposed. We are attempting to balance in way too many things, and we become frustrated. And he was talking about how stress impacts your what did he call it? Not in my head right now. Your immune system. I will think of it in a minute, but it's how it impacts your body on a specific level. How stress does. There's this physicality. There's the manifestation of disease and other things, and stress has. They were talking about a study. He was talking about a study about stress, how it impacted something else, and I was thinking, yeah, when I was in California, I had to get up. I knew that if I didn't get on the road at a certain period of time, I was going to be stuck in traffic. I'd have to deal with more traffic than I really wanted to deal with, right? Because in bumper-to-bumper traffic, you expend a lot of energy because you have to be incredibly aware of where you are at all times and who's around you. And if you're in that kind of environment for 45 minutes to an hour, some people I know a couple of hours a day, it's ridiculous, then you're expending a lot of your emotional capital on something that has really no relevance to you in your life. And so you're tired by the time you get to where you are. And that creates stress. When somebody does something you don't anticipate, whatever, you react, you get the tightness in the solar plexus. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of what happens. Absolutely. And I moved here to Florida, North Florida. There are no freeways. There's freeways 50 miles away. I'm on the coast. Doesn't mean we don't have traffic a couple times a day. However, in California, when I go back to see my mother, we say, oh, let's go to so-and-so. And the first thing across my mind is, what time is it? What time is it, and what are the traffic patterns going to be like? That's what I have to think about. What time do we have?
Yeah, you made a choice. But that's not where you want to be.
Right. Mm-hmm. The minute I came here, my girlfriend immediately recognized a shift, a change in me back in 2003. What's the change? The change is I was no longer expending emotional capital on things that just to manage my day-to-day life. I wasn't spending that emotional capital on that. I could get up in the morning, since my office is in my home, I could come up and set aside time to meditate. I could go walk in the morning. I go to the barn and help her clean up. What I was investing in changed, because every time I go back to California, I have to now invest that capital in those things. And we literally put ourselves in a situation where we have to do that. I know you don't have to do that because you've arranged your life in such a way that none of that is part of it. Am I right?
Right. I try to do as many things as I can to nourish my soul. I encourage my clients and I've done it myself, is really to be self-full. And people think that being self-full is selfish. It's not. You need to know when something does not feel right. And no is a very difficult word for me to learn. I always wanted to be a people pleaser. As a child, I was the firstborn. I didn't want to disappoint. I always wanted to, oh, sure, I'll stay late and clean the chalkboards. And it started, you do those things. But as you get older, you say, oh, I don't really like breathing in that chalk dust, and so maybe I'll let somebody else take over that duty, and whatever it is that you need to do to be self-full. And sometimes it's recognizing when you need to close a door. I've noticed, sometimes we'll keep doors open longer than we should because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or step on anybody's toes.
Right.
But we're not doing a service to ourselves. And I think that that's what a lot of this whole process and going inward and that reminder of stillness is all about. And, I really love what's going on in the world right now as far as science is concerned and the connection to the quantum. In the old model, the Newtonian model, it was, there was a nucleus and then there was these atoms and protons and electrons and, they all spun around that nucleus. But what they found is in the quantum model, it's a center and then these rings around it, sort of like in a tree and in nature, and they vibrate and they pulse. And, so what's in that center? And, you talk about that 0 point field, where there are zero limits. And I read something and I wanted to share it with you because it was actually in a phenomenal resource called an Ascension Glossary. And they talked about the 0 point field being the source of our genesis, that's where the infinite energy supply comes from. And they said, love is radiating, strengthening, and unifying force that spirals into the upward movements towards the central point of oneness, the 0 point. The force of love naturally aligns itself into unity with the 0 point field, unifying the hearts of the universe. The absence of love or hatred is a disintegrating, separate, and weakening force which absorbs the light and energy away from the central point of this oneness. So it's all about that love, that radiating, going into that infinite energy source that we're all connected to. And that which is why, Michael and I, are so passionate about it, connecting to love. It really spoke to me, and I just thought, that's where we're headed. That's what I want to see for the the future for us all, to really connect at that space, and then really to be able to live without any limits. Live your life without limits. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
I love that, by the way. The field of unconditional love. It's interesting to many people that I know, that I speak with, unconditional love, living from unconditional love, and the 0 point field, as I understand it, is a field of unconditional love. Am I right about that?
Yes.
A field of unconditional love. Yeah, that is expansive. That'd be right?
Absolutely. Yes. There is. It's infinite. It's infinite. There's no limits.
Yeah. There's no limit to it. It's you and it's interesting. You and I have, through intention, decided that this is where that unconditional love and living from that field is what we desire to do. And when you make that decision, then the things that you handle life differently. You handle situations, the challenges, your circumstances at the time. You handle them completely different. And that is, I guess, the most important thing to take from this is that it all kind of, it's back to what I was talking about in the morning when you get up. You have a choice. You have a choice about how you are going to be present in your day. I think being present was something we talked about last week. Being present. Unconditional love exists in the present. It exists right here, right now. And it's not, I mean, it's an active, in the moment thing. I don't know if I think you'll agree with me when I simply say that applying unconditional love to something that's already happened is okay if it helps heal something. Especially if we're talking about people. You're talking about yourself, healing yourself. You've got to give yourself unconditional love first. You've got to actually step into that field yourself. A lot of times these fields are taken as, oh, it's out there. It's that thing. That 0 point field is not really out there. If we're talking about a oneness concept, if we're all one, we all come from the same place. We all come from the same beautiful, pristine lake, and we're just drops that when we go back to that pristine, unconditional, loving place, we are unconditional love before, during, and after. That's basically the way I kind of like see it. When we're here, it is something that you live and exists right here in the present moment. You can throw it into the future, however, that when you live from it now, it impacts your future. It creates a reality in the future that is replete with unconditional love, because you're going to see future events from that perspective, and it all kind of ties together. What I love about that is it's a different way to explain something that we've talked about in this radio show and podcast before, and that is that we come from a love, we come from oneness, and we have and everything must emanate from us. If we want to change something outside of us, we're the one who has to adopt it. Again, goes back to Ho'oponopono and everything else. We are the ones that have to change ourselves. We are the ones who have to create this. The challenge, one of the challenges in this world today, and I'm noticing it more and more because social media for me is kind of like I don't know, I call it a necessary evil. I have to use it to communicate with people, to communicate the message that I have with people. However, I'm not really, I have to live in a state of what I call detached involvement when it comes to managing my emotional capital, my unconditional love, my time and energy, all those other things, my focus, my attention, because there's so many other things out there that are very divisive on that medium. And I've noticed an uptick in it in the last couple of days. Really interesting. An uptick in the divisiveness, even on like LinkedIn. And I resist the temptation to get involved in it. I read a couple of things. I notice that this is heading in a direction that is very divisive, and this is people who obviously don't embrace unconditional love. They don't live from it. They allow everything outside of them to dictate. What's outside of them is dictating what it is that they're saying right now. It's not what's within them. It's they're letting things, situations, circumstances, events dictate how they feel about themselves and about their world. And I don't engage in that. I've decided, no, I'm not going to even respond. I'm not even going to put this out there, because where they're coming from with this is a lot of vitriol and a lot of negativity. They live in the lower realms. So there has to be a transformation here. And the big question for me that I always ask is, how can I be a spark for that change? And in my view, it has to come through direct relational connection. And social media has no direct relational connection. So it's really just an illusionary platform. If I were to speak to somebody one-on-one, I would come from love and compassion and empathy and communicating what I see occurring is that you're focusing a lot of emotional capital on things that you do not control. And in doing so, you're frustrated, you're fearful, you're angry. And in order to, and that is resonating out to everybody around you that you know, your family, your friends, your loved ones, your children especially. We have generations now growing up on these platforms. And what's missing, you and I know, is the concept of unconditional love for yourself. For yourself. Because what's happening is the people are judging themselves and how they feel about themselves. That's being determined by something outside of them that they cannot control. And this is it's one of the greatest challenges I think our world is going to face in the next few decades, is that we have to find a way to help young people, as young as possible, discover the love that they have for themselves. Discover that this concept of this 0-point field in a way that makes sense, that you have to love yourself first. Everything emanates from you, not from the outside in, the inside out. And that's how we change the world going forward, whether it's climate change or whatever. You love the planet, you love yourself, you have to love yourself first, and then you can relay that to everything else that's outside of you. We have a lot of challenges. I think about these things. I know you do too sometimes, but I sit around and when I'm meditating and the questions that come to my mind is how can I have an impact? How can my podcast impact people? How can this radio show, Connect to Love, impact people in a way that actually does create this pivotal paradigmatic shift in thinking, just to one degree, because 1 degree of shift creates many, many, many hundreds of degrees of difference in someone's life. And it's a constant conundrum for me. It's a positive one because I'm always sitting down and attempting to figure out how I can convey something in a different way that will impact somebody in a positive way that actually means something. Oh, I get it now. Where they say that.
As you're speaking, Michael, what echoes in my head over and over again is love thy neighbor as thyself. And I think what you're saying is, there's not a lot of self-love. And so we don't know how to love somebody else. You first, and that's what going inward is. You just like I did, I self-corrected my behavior yesterday. I had to forgive myself. I had to realize, where my unkindness was and why, why did I do that? And go back to the point. It was okay. I went through all the different things. It's my frustration with me, really, is what it was. That things were not in control the way that I wanted them to be. And I let things, unfold in a not a kind way. But I took that approach. I did. Love it. I did take that moment to self-correct and re-examine, and whether and it wouldn't have mattered if it was my brother or somebody else. It still would have bothered me equally. It would not. I may not have had that opportunity to apologize to a stranger. And, you don't know, and as we talk about the kindness is what we share with somebody else. So I would say, that when you love yourself, love thy neighbor as yourself, you nourish your soul. You find value in the moment that we share and the present time with other people. As that praying manna showed me today, take a moment of stillness, remind yourself that the essence of our being is love and forgiveness, and that we all have an innate right to be happy and to really be connected in that space of love. And that's the most powerful thing that there is. And I'm going to let you sign off because you always do such an eloquent way. And, I just want to say how grateful I am to you and to Jesse at the station here at PRN FM and to all of our listeners.
Absolutely.
I'm just, in gratitude for each and every one of you. And I love you. And I love you, Michael, and I will let you sign off.
As I do, I love you too. As you said that, I will simply convey this one thing, that having the most beautiful thing about what you did with your brother is what I say, having the presence of mind to pivot, to understand that you're coming from love. However, you got caught up in the moment, and it's not your initial reaction or response, what you initially say, that's important. That is what it is. It's how quickly you can pivot from love, how quickly you can shift and transform and make that pivot to love from wherever what your initial response or inclination was, your initial action. And that was the beauty of this, the absolute essence of the beauty of what you did. Everybody does that, and we're all human. We say things, we do things, and it's how quickly we can shift from what we said back to love. That makes all the difference in the world, and is a healing and can heal. So I think Einstein said something really beautiful. I have to, if I can get to it here really quickly. I want to simply say it. Let's see. Einstein, where are you, Einstein? Yeah, here we go. The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. That was Albert Einstein. Quite interesting for a man who was such a brainiac. He had a great grasp of this fact, and I think that's brilliant. So I thank our listeners here on PRN FM. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
So it is.